The date today is 42424. Welcome to Community Radio Networks. We are here to provide you all the information you need to take on the day today. We'll start with the world news. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news read by Shabnam Matgil. The Senate has passed a $95 billion in war aid to Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan, sending the legislation to President Biden after months of delays and contentious debate over how involved the U.S. should be in foreign wars. The bill passed the Senate on this overwhelming 79-18 vote late last night after the House had approved the package on Saturday. President Biden, who worked with congressional leaders to win support, said in a statement immediately after passage that he will sign it today and start the process of sending weapons to Ukraine, which has been struggling to hold its front lines against Russia. The Senate voted 79-18 to pass this long-awaited package that combines $95 billion of foreign aid to Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan with other national security measures, including a possible TikTok ban that we'll talk about in a minute. The Senate's approval of this package comes after the House passed it at 4 separate bills over the weekend. And the foreign assistance consists of $61 billion for Ukraine, $26 for Israel, including humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza, and $8 billion for Taiwan. Arrests of pro-Palestine protesters could be seen last night as activists had gathered outside of Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's home in New York City. And we had protests against Israel filling the streets in Brooklyn and escalated at universities across the United States, some of which included Jewish Passover seders as demonstrators demanded an end to civilian casualties in Gaza. The growing protests follow mass arrests of demonstrators at some East Coast universities in recent days and show a deepening dissatisfaction in the U.S., historically Israel's most important ally, with the course of the fighting with Hamas. Pro-Palestinian protests have followed President Joe Biden, a self-declared Zionist, for months at universities. The protests have recently grown to encampments that draw students and faculty of various backgrounds, including of Jewish and Muslim faiths, that host teach-ins, interfaith prayers and musical performances. Protests loomed and negotiations inched forward at Columbia University and elsewhere as colleges across the nation grappled with this unrest after days of demonstrations, campus closures and arrests swirling around U.S. support for Israel in its war on Hamas. Protests against Israel's streets have filled many areas here in the United States, and students and activist staff at Australia's University of Sydney have set up a Gaza solidarity encampment in support of Palestinians and similar student-led protests elsewhere. Egyptian authorities have arrested activists at a protest held in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza, and Palestinian civilians fleeing their homes in northern Gaza just weeks after returning because of Israeli bombardment, which they claim is as intense as the start of the military operation. The Israeli military has carried out more than a dozen simultaneous air attacks on southern Lebanese towns also. And the Israeli military says it deployed these airstrikes against the Hezbollah infrastructure throughout southern Lebanon. Hezbollah has launched a series of drone strikes against Israeli military bases in its deepest attack inside Israel since the start of the war in Gaza. Iran and Pakistan have strongly condemned the ongoing Israeli regime's aggression and atrocities against the Palestinian people, along with the inhumane blockade of Gaza that has resulted in widespread death and destruction as well as displacement of millions of Palestinians. The Senate voted yesterday to pass a bill that will either ban TikTok or force a sale of the short-form video app, giving its China-based parent company ByteDance up to 1 year to divest its crown jewel before facing deletion from U.S. app stores. And the vote was a landslide, with 79 senators voting in favor and 18 against. And the bill passed in the House by a margin of 360 to 58 as part of a foreign aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, and now making its way to the desk of Joe Biden, who has previously said he would sign the legislation. The Senate has passed that bill that would restrict the video TikTok, a historic development in government regulation of social media that's on track to quickly become law. The U.S. Justice Department announced yesterday it'll pay nearly $139 million to settle claims by 139 women over the FBI's mishandling of sexual abuse allegations against former Team USA gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. And this settlement comes more than 2 years after a group of women, including Olympic gold medalists Simone Biles, Ali Raisman, and Michaela Maroney, filed lawsuits against the FBI. Former President Trump's New York criminal trial over alleged falsified business records continued yesterday, featuring testimony from a former longtime head of the National Enquirer. Publisher David Pecker detailed the 2015 agreement he made with then-Trump lawyer Michael Cohen to purchase and not publish negative stories about Trump. Amid the 2016 presidential campaign, the trial pauses today and will resume tomorrow. Former President Trump spent last week stuck in New York City for the beginning of this hush money trial, but today, between days in court, he made time to call into a secretive donor meeting back at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. The event was hosted by the Rockbridge Network, an under-the-radar New Age conservative group that sees itself as the leading edge of a changing Republican Party and is putting tens of millions of dollars into building a fresh infrastructure to support it. He spoke to a room of about 250 attendees who leaned more tech populist than traditional 20th century right or left, having gravitated to the former president and the way he has shaken up the Republican Party. Former President Trump and President Biden scored overwhelming primary victories in the battleground state of Pennsylvania yesterday, facing opponents who had long since dropped out of the race. Trump appeared to take 83% of the vote against Nikki Haley, his former rival in the Republican primary. Still, Nikki Haley won the votes of more than 155,000 Pennsylvanians across the state that is considered essential to victory in November, although she has ended her campaign more than a month ago. On the Democratic side, President Biden, who grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, took nearly 95% of the vote. The furthest object man has ever sent into space has finally reconnected with NASA as the Voyager 1 spacecraft made contact with Earth for the first time in 5 months. 5 months ago, communication with the spacecraft, which is about 15 billion miles from Earth, ceased due to issues with the 46-year-old Voyager 1 after its flight data system's telemetry modulation unit started sending a repeating pattern of code that was indecipherable. The flight data system is responsible for collecting the information from the spacecraft's science instruments, which it then bundles with engineering data that reflects its current health status. However, engineers at NASA were able to come up with the solution, and it received its first coherent data about the health and status of Voyager 1's engineering systems. Thousands of negotiators representing more than 170 nations, researchers, civil society groups and businesses gathered in Canada this week to draft the first global treaty to reduce the growing problem of plastic pollution. Plastics currently account for 5% of climate emissions globally, and reports predict that without action, this could increase to 20% by the year 2050. The head of Mexico's detective service acknowledged that the country is the champion of fentanyl production, something that appears to run counter to past statements by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. He had hotly denied in the past that any fentanyl is produced in Mexico, saying Mexican cartels only press it into pills or add finishing touches. But the head of Mexico's Criminal Investigation Agency said that since the 1990s, Mexico has been the champion of methamphetamine production and now fentanyl. Hundreds of people have taken to the streets in Argentina to protest against cuts in higher education sector. According to the University of Buenos Aires, more than 500,000 demonstrators protested in the capital alone yesterday against the strict austerity program of President Javier Milei's ultra-liberal government. The education system in Argentina is considered to be one of the best in Latin America. Studies at public universities are free of charge, and many young people from other countries in the region also come to the country to study, raising their textbooks and diplomas and singing the national anthem. Hundreds of thousands of Argentines filled the streets of Buenos Aires and other cities yesterday to demand increased funding for the country's public universities. A Peruvian psychologist who had an incurable disease that weakened her muscles and left her bedridden for several years has died by euthanasia, becoming the first person in Peru to obtain the right to die with medical assistance. She fought for years in Peruvian courts for the right to choose to die and become a celebrity in the conservative country where euthanasia and assisted suicide are illegal. Ukraine is tightening pressure on men of all call-up age living abroad by suspending their consular services amid a wider overhaul of the country's mobilization rules aimed at beefing up its defenses against Russia's invasion. Russian President Putin shames Zelensky and its allies by parading captured Ukrainian vehicles in Moscow. The seized military equipment includes U.S.-made M113 armored personnel carriers, Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, German-made Marder IFV, and Azovets armored vehicles. And the vehicles were spotted in Moscow in the vicinity of Victory Park. A top Russian military official arrested on suspicion of accepting a bribe was sent to pre-trial detention today after appearing before a court in central Moscow. No fencers from Russia or Belarus will take part in the Paris Olympics after those eligible under a neutral banner did not enter for European qualifiers. And German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's government is pushing the U.S. to deliver at least one more Patriot anti-missile system to Ukraine to help close the air defense gap as Russia escalates a barrage of attacks. The UK will send more Storm Shadow long-range missiles to Ukraine as part of its single biggest military aid package to the country since Russia's invasion, according to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Germany and Britain plan to jointly develop a remote-controlled howitzer for future military ground operations. German President Steinmeier will end his 3-day visit to Turkey today with a meeting with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He will first welcome his guests from Germany with military honors, followed by lengthy talks, a press conference, and a joint lunch. Britain's Home Secretary touted Britain's migrant deportation deal with Rwanda as a new and creative deterrent to an old and growing problem, but he said he took seriously criticism by the UN Refugee Agency that violates international law. Home Secretary James Cleverly visited Italy, ground zero in Europe's migration debate, hours after the UK Parliament yesterday approved legislation to enable the government to deport some people to Rwanda who enter Britain illegally. And the deal, in which Britain will pay Rwanda to process the migrants, is aimed at deterring people from crossing the English Channel from France, similar to some basic aspects to Italy's controversial pact to outsource the processing of asylum seekers to Italian-run centers in Albania. And 21 migrants died in boat disasters off the coast of the Horn of Africa and trying to cross the English Channel from France to Britain. Bodies of the 22 people were found off the coast of the Tunisian port city of Sfax in recent days. And the bodies of 19 were recovered off the coast of Tunisia, one of the primary points of departure for those seeking to traverse the Mediterranean Sea to Europe. The Dutch National Intelligence Agency has said that threats targeting the Netherlands are increasingly connected to worldwide turmoil, including the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. Although the number of terror attacks across Europe has been down in recent years, the General Intelligence and Security Service, in its annual report, said Israel-Hamas war in Gaza and the destruction of a Quran outside the parliament last year are trigger events for extremists. Spain approved a plan aimed at making reparation and economic compensation for victims of sex abuse committed by people connected to the Catholic Church. It also announced the future celebration of a public act of recognition for those affected and their families. Skies over southern Greece turned an orange hue as dust clouds blown across the Mediterranean Sea from North Africa engulfed the Acropolis and other Athens landmarks. Strong southerly winds carried this dust from the Sahara Desert, giving the atmosphere of the Greek capital a Martian-like filter in the last hours of daylight yesterday. And this dust storm turned the skies red and orange in Benghazi and Derna, also cities in northern Libya on the Mediterranean Sea. South Africa's former President Jacob Zuma's newly formed party vowed to nationalize land and banks, withdraw from the International Criminal Court, and expand the social security net in its campaign manifesto released before the May 29th elections. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the world news on community radio networks. And North Korea sent its highest-level delegation to Iran in about 5 years as the U.S. raised concerns that arms sales from Pyongyang and Tehran have helped fuel conflicts in the Middle East and Russia's war in Ukraine. North Korea has said it has carried out a nuclear counter-attack simulation involving super-large multiple rocket artillery men. And North Korea's missile test was in fact a drill to test nuclear force preparedness. The incident raised alarms around the region after several short-range ballistic missiles were launched near Pyongyang and flew approximately 185 miles before falling in the waters between the Korean peninsula and Japan. Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, said the country will continue to build overwhelming and strongest military power to protect its sovereignty and regional peace. China today blasted the latest package of U.S. military assistance to Taiwan, saying that such funding was pushing the self-governing island republic into a dangerous situation. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken due in China today as the U.S. ramps up pressure on its rival over its support for Russia, while also seeking to manage tensions with Beijing. And it is the U.S. diplomat who will meet China's top brass on Friday in Beijing, where he's also expected to plead for restraint as Taiwan inaugurates a new leader and to raise U.S. concerns on Chinese trade practices, a vital issue for President Biden in an election year. Indonesia's Electoral Commission formally declared Prabowo Subianto president-elect in a ceremony this morning after the country's highest court rejected challenges to his landslide victory lodged by two losing presidential candidates in this news out of Jakarta. Two Malaysian military helicopters have collided and crashed during a training session, killing all 10 crew on board. Footage shared online showed several helicopters flying low in formation over that naval base located 160 kilometers from Kuala Lumpur while participating in a flypast rehearsal ahead of Naval Day celebrations next month. And reports of deposed former Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi's move to house arrest are questionable. Her son said, adding that he believed the ruling military junta wants to keep her location secret to deter resistance attacks on the capital as the civil war rages. He cast doubt on the recent reports in local media out there that the 78-year-old Aung San Suu Kyi, the longtime democracy icon and Nobel laureate, had been moved from her prison cell ostensibly due to the unbearable heat. India's T20 World Cup squad is expected to be announced by the BCCI before the end of this month, and the interest around that transcends boundaries, which shows in the words of former Jamaican sprinter Johan Blake. The T20 World Cup is scheduled to be co-hosted by the USA and the West Indies from the 2nd to the 29th of June. And of course, he is a known cricket fan, undoubtedly looking forward to this tournament and watching the Indian team play in the Caribbean islands. However, India will begin their campaign on the 5th of June, play all the group matches in the United States. India are placed alongside Pakistan, Ireland, Canada, and the United States in Group A. And after kicking off the campaign against Ireland on the 5th of June in New York, India will play Pakistan on the 9th of June at the same venue, the Nassau County International Cricket Stadium. Shubman Gill, the captain of the Gujarat Titans, will play his 100th game in the lucrative IPL today when the team plays the Delhi Capitals at the Arun Jaitley Stadium. Voting for the fourth phase of the Lok Sabha elections, encompassing 10 states and union territories, is slated to commence on the 13th of May. The Lok Sabha elections of 2024 being conducted across 7 phases, which started on the 19th of April, followed by subsequent phases on the 26th of this month, and then next month on the 7th, 13th, 20th, and 25th, as well as the 1st of June, and counting for the votes will be done on the 4th of June for all 545 constituencies. Lok Sabha elections, which started, will be conducted in 7 phases, and they're among those eagerly awaiting their chance to contribute are the first-time voters, a demographic poised to make its mark on the nation's political landscape. Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi today accused Prime Minister Modi and top BJP leaders of lying to people and attempting to mislead and scare them. From the behavior of top BJP leaders, it appears that the elections are not going as per their expectations. And in a blistering attack on Prime Minister Modi, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi today said that those who call themselves Deshbhakt are scared of X-ray of caste census, but no force can stop it. He was speaking at the Samajik Nyay Sammelan in New Delhi and emphasized that his focus is on Nyay or justice rather than caste. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge also today responded to Prime Minister Modi's Mangal Sutra remarks, questioning what sacrifice has any BJP or RSS leader made for the country, and highlighted the contributions of former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, who donated her jewelry during the 1962 India-China war, and the sacrifices made by Pandit Motilal Nehru and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who donated their home to the freedom movement. Delhi's Rouse Avenue Court today reserved its order on regular bail of BRS leader K. Kavita in the Delhi excise policy money laundering case. And the Supreme Court of New Delhi issued contempt notice to the Vice Chairman of the Delhi Development Authority for the felling of over 1,000 trees for the construction of an approach road between Chhatarpur Road and the SAARC University near Maidan Gadi. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi met Sindh Chief Minister Sayyid Murad Ali Shah during his visit to Karachi and had a detailed discussion on Pakistan-Iran economic opportunities, including issues concerning investment. He is currently on a 3-day visit to Pakistan and had arrived yesterday out there. Tehran and Islamabad agreed to expeditiously finalize a free trade agreement. A joint statement said this morning as Iranian President Raisi concluded his 3-day official visit to Pakistan. West Indies rode on yet another century by skipper Hayley Matthews to win the 3rd Women's One-Day International and secure a 3-0 clean sweep over Pakistan at the National Bank Stadium in Karachi. And meanwhile, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif arrived in Karachi on a day-long visit where he's expected to hold meetings with the Sindh Chief Minister and a governor. Upon his arrival at the Karachi airport, the Sindh governor, Kamran Tasari, and Chief Minister Murad Ali Shah welcomed him, and he visited the Mazar-e-Qaid, where he laid a floral wreath and offered Fatiha. A 6-member bench of the Supreme Court of Pakistan in Islamabad today decided that a larger bench should hear a set of intra-court appeals against the court's October 23rd unanimous ruling that had nullified the military trials of civilians involved in the May 9th riots. And the Supreme Court has ruled that male family members deciding the terms of nikah on behalf of the bride is accepted as a cultural and social norm, but it puts her at a disadvantage in the later stages of marriage. The order that was released was pronounced by a 2-member Supreme Court bench in the case of determining the bride's entitlement to a plot mentioned in the Nikah Nama. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you this morning. I do have your financial news, and that is coming up for you in a separate section in just a minute. Let's get you now the financial news, and we do start that with the foreign currency exchange rates every morning. We do have the Indian rupee at 83.33, Pakistani rupee at 278.44, Bangladeshi taka at 109.81, the Sri Lankan rupee at 298.27, Nepalese rupee 133.39, the British pound is at 0.80, the euro is at 0.93, the Canadian dollar 1.37, the Australian dollar 1.54, Mexican peso 17.06, Chinese yuan 7.25, Japanese yen 154.99, the Russian ruble at 92.22, Thai baht is at 37.06, and the Turkish lira at 32.53. Tech stocks have popped ahead of the bell this morning, outstripping the broader market as investors welcomed Tesla's cheaper car pledge and waited for the next rush of corporate earnings. Futures in the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 rose roughly 0.5%, coming off a sharp closing gain. S&P 500 futures were up 0.1%, continuing a rebound from its longest losing streak of the year, while Dow Jones Industrial Average futures wobbled along the flat line. Tesla's stock has jumped in pre-market trading today after the company said it would accelerate the launch of more affordable vehicles. Countering reports earlier this month the company would scrap these plans. Tesla expects to book more than $350 million in costs in the current quarter for the mass layoffs it began last week, as it shifts focus to more affordable models that it plans to introduce by early next year. And it would introduce these new models using its current platforms and production lines as it retreated from more ambitious plans to produce an all-new model that had been expected to cost $25,000. And Boeing this morning reported earnings that beat Wall Street expectations after a tumultuous first quarter. Boeing reported first quarter core or adjusted loss per share of $1.13, narrower than the $1.72 estimated on revenue of $16.57 billion, which was above forecasts of $16.25 billion, but an 8% decline from a year ago. Boeing said that it lost $355 million on falling revenue in the first quarter, another sign of the crisis gripping the aircraft manufacturer as it faces increasing scrutiny over the safety of its planes and accusations of shoddy work from a growing number of whistleblowers. Boeing's lower 737 MAX production will slow the pace of its recovery as it faces a difficult period following a harrowing mid-air blowout on one of its jets in January. General Motors reported first quarter results that topped analyst estimates on both the top and bottom lines, and the automaker also raised its full-year profit outlook. Biogen beat Wall Street estimates for first quarter profit today as a series of cost-cutting measures have helped offset the impact of fierce competition for its older drugs, sending its shares up nearly 4% before the bell today. The company also said its Alzheimer's drug Leqembi, developed with Japanese partner Eisai, recorded global sales of about $19 million, nearly tripling from the fourth quarter of last year. Humana beat first quarter profit expectations today, helped by strength in its government-backed insurance business for older adults and boost from valuation adjustments in some strategic partnership, and shares of the company rose 3.3% in pre-market trading after the health insurer also raised its individual Medicare Advantage growth target by 50,000 members this year. AT&T surpassed Wall Street expectations for the first quarter wireless subscriber additions and free cash flow today as more people purchased its higher tier unlimited plans, and shares of the company were up 3.7% in pre-market trading. Upcoming quarterly reports from the U.S. tech giants may show Microsoft is closing the gap on cloud computing market leader Amazon.com as more businesses switch to its services, attracted by a clutch of generative AI features that are powered by OpenAI's technology. The Redmond, Washington-based software giant has beaten rivals Amazon and Google parent Alphabet to the market with AI services, including the Copilot, a set of Gen AI tools that work in Microsoft's business apps that was rolled out in November for $30 a month. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon is concerned the U.S. economy could be in for a repeat of problems that hampered the country during the 70s. And the Commodity Futures Trading Commission has reached out to a number of banks, including JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Citigroup, to see if they've been preventing would-be whistleblowers from speaking out. U.S. mortgage rates increased to the highest level in 5 months, pushing down home purchase applications for the 5th time in the last 6 weeks. And the contract rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage increased 11 basis points in the week that ended the 19th of April to 7.24%, the highest since the 24th of November. And the index of mortgage applications for home purchases has fallen 1%. A federal rule announced this morning will require airlines to quickly give cash refunds without lengthy arguments to passengers whose flights have been cancelled or seriously delayed. This, according to the Biden administration's passengers deserve to get their money back when an airline owes them without headaches or haggling. And this rule from the Department of Transportation says passengers who decline other reimbursement like travel credits are to get a cash refund. A significant change includes when departure or arrival times are 3 or more hours different than scheduled for domestic flights or 6 hours for international flights, and also cases where the airport is changed or connections added. Passengers are also to get a refund when their baggage is 12 hours late in delivery for domestic flights. Under a new rule unveiled today, approximately 4.3 million salaried U.S. workers who previously didn't qualify for overtime pay could soon receive time and a half for working more than 40 hours a week. The U.S. Department of Labor shared that the rule will extend overtime pay to salaried workers who earn less than $1,128 a week. And the Federal Trade Commission voted 3-2 to ban non-compete agreements that prevent tens of millions of employees from working for competitors or starting a competing business after they leave a job. From fast food workers to CEOs, the FTC estimates 18% of the U.S. workforce is covered by non-compete agreements. That's about 30 million people. And we do have, as the American worker continues to recalibrate what work-life balance means in the aftermath of the COVID-19 lockdown, an event that is forcing bosses and employees to reimagine work. A new phenomenon is beginning to take root, and that is mini sabbaticals. Much like college students who step away from their studies for a gap year to travel and see the world, adults in the workforce are starting to see the value in taking extended time off, and many companies are leaning into those desires from their employees as a way to mitigate burnout. The number of women seen at a hospital due to alcohol misuse nearly doubled during the pandemic. This was a study published in the journal JAMA Health Forum. Complications of alcohol-related diseases rose by 33% to 56% among middle-aged women during the 10 months between April 2020 and September 2021. Caitlin Clark appears to be on the cusp of setting another record, the most prolific scorer in NCAA's Division I history, and the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft will continue her association with Nike by signing a $28 million contract that spans 8 years and includes a signature shoe. The Wall Street Journal and The Athletic reported this pending deal, citing unnamed people familiar with the negotiations between the sportswear giant and Clark's agents. American rapper Megan Thee Stallion, whose real name is Megan Pete, has been sued by her former cameraman Emilio Garcia for subjecting him to sexual harassment and weight-shaming comments. And he worked for the artist from 2018 to 2023 and has also accused her of creating a hostile work environment. It feels potentially unlucky to talk about breaking records when the subject is actual LPs, but there's no way around combining these terms when we are talking about Taylor Swift, the modern queen of vinyl. She's broken her own record for the most sales of a vinyl album in a week and did it in just 3 days with 700,000 LP copies sold of The Tortured Poets Department over the weekend. As housing costs across North Texas continue to rise, Dallas voters will be deciding on a $1.25 billion bond, part of which deals with keeping housing affordable. 2 of the 10 items in the Dallas bond package deal with housing and homelessness. Dallas can itself call itself a home to one of the most beautiful places in the country. And in a study that was conducted analyzing over 2,700 U.S. landmarks, the Dallas Arboretum and Botanical Gardens has ranked number 1 as the most picturesque botanical garden in the southern United States and the 3rd most Instagrammable in the country. With over 129,000 hashtags, the Dallas Arboretum beat out the Atlanta Botanical Garden by over 39,000. And in the entire country, Dallas came in in third, behind only Pennsylvania's Longwood Gardens and New York's Brooklyn Botanic Garden. One of the biggest gripes about Dallas, though, is the lack of public transportation. The Metroplex is so big, you need a car to get around to see and do everything. However, the city is a lot more walkable than you might think. According to this survey, Dallas ranked as the third most walkable city in the nation, ranking only behind Chicago and Nashville. All 5 of Dallas tourist hotspots can be covered within 3,570 steps, which equates to 1.7 miles or 41 minutes of walking in total. Officials broke ground on what's being billed as the first true high-speed rail system in the United States, connecting Las Vegas to Southern California. The system, operated by Brightline West, will feature fully electric trains reaching speeds of 200 miles per hour. And the average speed will be around 115, far outpacing Amtrak's, which can hit 150 but averages 70. And that is going to be between Southern California and Las Vegas. With the projected ridership of 10 million people per year, the 218-mile rail line is being constructed in the middle of the highway I-15 and will make stops in Las Vegas and 3 California locales: Victor Valley, Hesperia, and Rancho Cucamonga. The goal is to have it running in time for Los Angeles to host the 2028 Summer Olympics. 5 months after Foxtrot and Dom's Kitchen and Market merged, the new company appears headed to bankruptcy, and all its stores in Illinois, Texas, and D.C. area are closing today. Corporate workers were informed yesterday via a conference call with management that the stores would be closing, and these are the stores. There are 4 of them here in Dallas. Employees notified yesterday. Foxtrot, a coffee shop and a retail store. It had 4 locations in Dallas. One was on Greenville and the others near Knox Henderson, Uptown, and Hillcrest, and the company filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Fort Worth's unmistakable skyline is about to get some company. The City Council unanimously approved a plan to increase the maximum building height in Panther Island to 20 stories. To put that in perspective, that's as tall as the former Pier 1 building that will soon become the new City Hall. For the record, the tallest building in Fort Worth is the Burnett Plaza. It is 40 stories tall. It was unanimous approval from the Arlington City Council for major renovations to the Texas Rangers' old ballpark, now called the Choctaw Stadium. The plan calls for adding 6,000 square feet of commercial space on the west side of Choctaw Stadium along the Nolan-Ryan Expressway. And a company that makes doors and windows will be building a new plant in Mansfield, bringing hundreds of new jobs to the area. The state of Texas is giving a $3.1 million grant from the Texas Enterprise Fund to Crystal Window and Door Systems. As a drought in Mexico drags on, angry subsistence farmers have begun taking direct action on thirsty avocado orchards and berry fields of commercial farms that are drying up streams in the mountains west of Mexico City. Rivers and even whole lakes are disappearing as the drought combines with the surge in the use of water for the country's lucrative export crops led by avocados. Tech giant Cisco Systems today joined Microsoft and IBM in signing on to a Vatican-sponsored pledge to ensure artificial intelligence is developed and used ethically and to benefit the common good. A recent BBC investigation revealed thousands of posts advertising illegal drug sales on seemingly innocuous social media platforms, many selling deadly nitazens hidden within other drugs. It's an illegal substance in the BBC's home country of Great Britain. They're synthetic substances similar to heroin and morphine, created in laboratories, though nitazens are hundreds of times stronger than either of those drugs. Like fentanyl, they are used by drug dealers to cut costs but can be deadly since users don't know of their presence. And according to this BBC report, almost 3,000 posts on the audio sharing platform SoundCloud contain simply a brief audio clip, usually only seconds long, with the name of the available drug and contact details listed as the track's title. This palatial property's staggering price makes it one of the most expensive homes of the world. And guess what? It's actually a palace outside of Paris, a castle that has been owned by a Rothschild family member and a king of Morocco, quietly being sold off market with the jaw-dropping price tag of $452 million. That sky-high asking price also buys centuries of history. The property dates to the 1100s, when it was a medieval stronghold known as the Armain-Villiers Castle. Japan's beloved Shinkansen trains are getting another upgrade from next year, or actually from 2026. Some trains on the Tokaido line, the country's busiest line, as it connects Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka, will have private rooms with doors in the upper class section. Elon Musk vowed to challenge Australian demands that his social media platform X take down videos of a recent Sydney church stabbing. Australia's federal court gave the platform 24 hours to remove videos of an Assyrian bishop being slashed in the head during a recent attack. Australia's e-safety commission had sought the court injunction, saying X ignored earlier removal notices. And Elon Musk has lashed out at the watchdog, saying the content had already been removed for users in Australia. The European Union announced an investigation into whether China is using unfair methods to deprive companies in Europe of access to its market for medical devices ranging from hypodermic needles to high-tech scanners. And the Senate that voted 79-18 last night to advance a landmark bill that gives China's ByteDance up to a year to divest TikTok or face a U.S. ban on the app. The next stop is the desk of President Biden, who has promised to sign it. Last week, Apple confirmed it had pulled several apps, including Telegram, WhatsApp, Threads, and Signal, from its China App Store after demands from the Chinese government citing national security concerns. As per reports, after Singapore, now Hong Kong has also banned the sale of popular Indian spice brands MDH Private and Everest Food Products after the alleged detection of the carcinogen pesticide ethylene oxide in several spice mixes. For the unversed, last week Singapore took similar action against Everest, alleging the presence of ethylene oxide at levels surpassing permissible limits. And we do have a report published on the official website of Hong Kong's Food Regulatory Authority mentioning that 3 spice products in India have cancer-causing chemicals that contain a pesticide known as this ethylene oxide. It is the MDH and Everest brands that are said to be having these. And we can build a very big business in India because fundamentally it's Indians, people of Indian origin, that have built most of the businesses in the U.S. This, apart from India's growing economic clout, is making British hospitality major Intercontinental Hotels Group, which at present has over 6,300 properties operational globally with over 4,000 in the U.S., its biggest market. Bet big on that country. It is the IHG Hotels and Resorts CEO, optimistic about the company's future in India, aiming to surpass its presence in China, with 46 hotels already in India and 49 more set to open. Prime Minister Modi is doing an unbelievable job in India, believes JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. I know the liberal press here beat the hell out of him, but he has taken 400 million people out of poverty, as Jamie Dimon lauded Prime Minister Modi, calling him tough and crediting him for doing a difficult job. The travel industry has welcomed the new favorable Schengen visa rules. These for Indians, but industry executives believe that the change is unlikely to provide any immediate relief for those seeking to travel to Europe who have been frustrated by long appointment wait times for the past 3 years. They expect that the move will, though, encourage more frequent travel to the continent and reduce visa queues in the future. India has expressed its concerns to the International Labour Organization regarding the recent report on employment titled India Employment Report 2024, where the government has questioned the inconsistencies in the data sets used and the misinterpretation of data on youth employment. Additionally, the report has been criticized for ignoring international mobility and the data on gig and platform workers. Gold prices have dropped by 2,900 rupees over 10 days, and the current price in India is 71,065 rupees per 10 grams. India's capital markets regulator has asked a clutch of global funds to defend themselves against allegations of improper disclosures and market manipulation relating to trading of the Adani Group stocks. SEC, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, has taken this action against two separate groups of foreign portfolio investors. And the group facing market manipulation allegations are suspected to have shorted stocks in firms led by billionaire Gautam Adani after getting wind that a shorter sell report should be published soon. Mukesh Ambani-led Reliance Industries Limited is gearing up to challenge the supremacy of foreign companies in the Indian consumer electronics and home appliances market with its new indigenous brand called Wiser. According to executives familiar with the company's plans, Reliance Industries Limited is in the process of finalizing manufacturing contracts with local firms Dixon Technologies and Merck Electronics, the parent company of Oneida. Tata Consultancy Services is establishing large data centers across the 4 regions of India as part of its 15,000 crore rupee agreement with state-owned telecommunications company Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited. And the Reserve Bank of India has instructed Kotak Mahindra Bank to immediately stop onboarding new customers through its online and mobile banking channels and ceasing issuing new credit cards. And this regulatory action was taken due to concerns about the bank's compliance and risk management practices. Indigo in-flight entertainment, where Indigo has announced a trial run of in-flight entertainment for passengers on its Delhi to Goa route. The airline plans to offer entertainment through its app on a trial basis for those flying between Delhi and Goa starting this coming 1st of May. This will be the first time Indigo provides in-flight entertainment to its customers. The Indian Railways plans to scale up its new program to provide affordable meals for passengers traveling in the general class coaches. And the initiative is in response to the anticipated increase in passenger traffic during the summer season. Iran and Pakistan have decided to increase the trade volume between the two countries to $10 billion, according to Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, adding that the existing volume, though, was not acceptable. Tehran is ready to exchange its prowess in industry, science, and technology with Pakistan after Iranian President Raisi mentioned that during his visit to Pakistan. Pakistan received only about $9.8 billion in foreign loans and grants in the first 9 months of the current fiscal year, far behind the annual target of $17.4 billion. And over half of the country's population does not have access to internet. But districts that perform better on digital transformation are also among the better performing areas in terms of human development. This was revealed by the first ever Digital Development Index report, and that was finalized this morning. Islamabad is the district with very high digital development, followed by Karachi, Lahore, Rawalpindi, Peshawar, Haripur, and Abbottabad in the high category. Bulls returned to the trading floor at the Pakistan Stock Exchange as shares climbed nearly 700 points today to breach the key 72,000 level for the first time. And the non-performing loans of the banking sector have increased as a prospective investment blueprint delineating a proposed infusion of $1 billion into various plans for the port development in Pakistan was unveiled by Hutchison Ports, one of the world's leading ports network already operating in the country. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif took notice of the willful delay in tax cases and ordered suspension of the Commissioner, Inland Revenue Islamabad, and other relevant officials. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you. I do have your final segment of the program coming up in just a minute on this lovely Wednesday morning. The date today is 4/24/24. Welcoming you to this Wednesday, and it is a muggy morning out here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The storm chances will ramp up on Friday through the weekend, and some could become severe. We'll keep you updated. Low clouds have invaded the area this morning, and temperatures are very mild. Readings are in the upper 60s, and there's nothing showing up on the radar. However, there will be a few showers up along the Red River Valley through late morning, and an isolated shower to possible anywhere across North Texas through early afternoon. And our highs today will top out near 80 degrees. And then we'll have morning clouds and peaks of afternoon sunshine for your Thursday tomorrow. And it'll be windy and warm again with the highs near the 80s. So that's what your weather looks like today. But let's tell you also what happened on today's date from the annals of history. It was in the year 1800 that President John Adams approves legislation to appropriate $5,000 to purchase such books as may be necessary for the use of Congress, thus establishing the Library of Congress. The first books ordered from London arrived in 1801 and were stored in the U.S. Capitol, the library's first home. The first library catalogue listed 964 volumes and 9 maps. 12 years later, the British Army invaded the city of Washington and burned the Capitol, including the then 3,000-volume Library of Congress. Former President Thomas Jefferson, who advocated the expansion of the library during his 2 terms in office, responded to the loss by selling his personal library, the largest and finest in the country, to Congress to recommence the library. And the purchase of Jefferson's 6,487 volumes was approved in the next year, and a professional librarian was hired to replace the House clerks in the administration of the library. And that was the Library of Congress that was established on today's date, the 24th of April in the year 1800. Today, ladies and gentlemen, the collection, housed in 3 enormous buildings in Washington, contains more than 17 million books, as well as millions of maps, manuscripts, photographs, films, audio and video recordings, prints, drawings, and digital material. The Union Army issues General Orders Number 100, which provided a code of conduct for federal soldiers and officers when dealing with Confederate prisoners and civilians. This code was borrowed by many European nations, and its influence can be seen on the Geneva Convention. The Union issued this conduct code for soldiers on today's date, the 24th of April in 1863. And on the 24th of April in 1916, on Easter Monday in Dublin, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, a secret organization of Irish nationalists led by Patrick Pearse, launches the so-called Easter Rising, an armed uprising against British rule. Assisted by militant Irish socialists under James Connolly, Pearse and his fellow Republicans rioted and attacked British provincial government headquarters across Dublin and seized the Irish capital's General Post Office. And following these successes, they proclaimed the independence of Ireland, which had been under the repressive thumb of the UK for centuries, and by the next morning were in control of much of the city. Later that day, however, British authorities launched a counter-offensive, and by the 29th of April, the uprising had been crushed. Nevertheless, the Easter Rebellion, also known as the Easter Rebellion itself, considered a significant marker on the road to establishing an independent Irish Republic. The Easter Rebellion, or the Easter Rising, on today's date, the 24th of April in 1916. And of course, as I mentioned, today's date is 42424. And on that date in 1953, Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, the British leader who guided Great Britain and the Allies through the crisis of World War II, is knighted by Queen Elizabeth II on today's date in 1953. It was 2 years after he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for his 6-volume historical study of World War II and for his political speeches. In 1955, he retired as Prime Minister but remained in Parliament until 1964, the year before his death. But he was knighted, Winston Churchill, knighted on the 24th of April in 1953. And in 1955, on today's date, the Afro-Asian Conference, popularly known as the Bandung Conference, because it was held in Bandung, Indonesia, comes to a close on this day. During the conference, representatives from 29 non-aligned nations in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East met to condemn colonialism, decry racism, and express their reservations about the growing Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Bandung Conference grew out of an increasing sense of frustration and alienation among the so-called non-aligned nations of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. And these were nations that preferred to remain neutral during the Cold War, believing that their interests would not be served by allying with either the United States or the Soviet Union. And various speeches and resolutions condemned the colonialism and imperialism and called for the freedom of all subjugated people. Racism in all forms was likewise criticized, and with the apartheid system of South Africa coming in for particularly harsh denunciation. The U.S. government was generally appalled by this Bandung Conference. Although invited to do so, it refused to send an unofficial observer to the meetings. And Secretary of State John Foster Dulles was already on record as equating neutralism in the fight against communism as close to a mortal sin. For the U.S., the issue was black and white: join America in the fight against communism or risk being considered a potential enemy. And this unfortunate policy brought the U.S. into numerous conflicts with nations of the underdeveloped world who were struggling to find a middle road in the Cold War. It was the Bandung Conference that concluded on today's date in 1955. And on the 24th of April in 1967, Soviet cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov is killed when his parachute fails to deploy during his spacecraft's landing and becomes the first human known to have died in space. He was testing the spacecraft Soyuz 1 in the midst of the space race between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. And earlier that year, the U.S. space program had experienced its own tragedy. Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee, NASA astronauts in the Apollo program, were killed in a fire during tests on the ground. But this was Soviet cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov, who was killed when his parachute fails to deploy, and becomes the first human known to have died in space. Beside the dangers, and despite all of them, both the Soviet Union and the U.S. continued their space exploration programs. The U.S. landed men on the moon just 2 years later. And on the 24th of April in 1980, an ill-fated military operation to rescue the 52 American hostages held in Tehran ends with 8 U.S. servicemen dead and no hostages rescued. With the Iran hostage crisis stretching into its 6th month and all diplomatic appeals to the Iranian government ending in failure, President Jimmy Carter ordered the military mission as a last-ditch attempt to save the hostages. During the operation, 3 of 8 helicopters failed, crippling the crucial airborne plans, and the mission was then cancelled at the staging area in Iran. But during the withdrawal, one of the retreating helicopters collided with one of the 6 C-130 transport planes, killing 8 service members and injuring 5. The next day, a somber Jimmy Carter gave a press conference in which he took full responsibility for that tragedy. The hostages were not released for another 270 days. He was unable to diplomatically resolve the crisis, and in 1980, on today's date, that hostage attempt ended in a disaster. 3 months later, the former Shah died of cancer in Egypt, but the crisis continued. And in November, Jimmy Carter lost the presidential election to Republican Ronald Reagan, and soon after, with the assistance of Algerian intermediaries, successful negotiations began between the U.S. and Iran. On the day of Reagan's inauguration, that was in 1981, the United States freed almost $8 billion in frozen Iranian assets, and the 52 hostages were released after 444 days. The next day, Jimmy Carter flew to West Germany to greet the Americans on their way home. The Iran hostage rescue mission that ended in disaster on the 24th of April in 1980. And in 1982, on today's date, Oscar-winning actress, anti-war activist, and Hollywood royalty Jane Fonda adds a new title exercise guru as she extends her reach into the home video market with the release of her first of many best-selling aerobic workout tapes. Daughter of the celebrated actor Henry Fonda, the star of the 1940s Grapes of Wrath, she worked as a model before joining Lee Strasberg's famed Actors Studio, broke out in 1960 with a Tony-nominated performance in Broadway's There Was a Little Girl, and a starring role in the big-screen comedy Tall Story, soon established a reputation as both sex pot and serious actress, earning her first Oscar nomination for 1969's They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, and taking home the Best Actress statuette 2 years later for Klute. As an outspoken member of the opposition to the U.S. war in Vietnam, she was famously photographed behind enemy lines next to an anti-aircraft gun during a visit to North Vietnam in 1972. She later expressed regret, though, about posing for that photograph. Won her second Best Actress Oscar in 1979 for Coming Home. The revenues from her exercise empire financed the Campaign for Economic Democracy, a leftist political organization founded by her then husband and the leading 1960s radical Tom Hayden. And after divorcing him, she largely withdrew from the spotlight, announced her retirement from acting in 1992, explaining her desire to spend more time with her third husband, and that was the media mogul Ted Turner. The couple divorced in 2001, and she returned to the big screen in several movies, including Monster-in-Law, Georgia Rule, This Is Where I Leave You, Our Souls at Night, and Book Club. Jane Fonda and her first workout video was released on today's date, the 24th of April, in the year 1982. I have huge thanks going out to the supporters of community radio networks. Big thanks to Discount Power, to Houston EB5, to the Ahluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, Mai Kalachi, Shri Vimal, also Eggholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flashbrush Productions. Shruti Sangeet Academy can teach you Indian classical vocal lessons by certified classical vocalist and talk show host Shanta Mishra. You can explore the soul of Indian music as they offer comprehensive curriculums, personalized instructions, and immersion in bhajans, shlokas, and folk music. For more information, you can call Shanta Mishra at 612-562-4432, shantamishra10@gmail.com. We have an organization, the Color Me Safe Foundation. It's a family crisis management organization serving the greater Dallas area. And they've launched 2 new educational initiatives. One of them is called Ask Auntie, and the other is Sathi Support Group. Through discussions on topics such as generational and cultural gaps, cultural identity, mental health, bullying, and many more, these programs seek to empower South Asian children and families with the tools and understanding to overcome these shared challenges in a very supportive and non-judgmental space. So we do have that, and do remember that early voting has begun across our state, and if you're planning to vote, please do remember that. But Election Day is on Saturday, the 4th of May. The EarthX 2024 Congress of Conferences is going on at the Hilton Anatole. You can visit earthx.org to register and get more information. Today is day 3. And the topic is Money, Media, Power and Politics, the eCapital Summit, bringing together over 200 investors and entrepreneurs. 2 powerful media leaders will make the case for climate protection to conservatives and progressives. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is EarthX 2024, the Congress of Conferences, going on at the Hilton Anatole this week. The Brahma Kumaris are having a stress management program through meditation. And that is happening it's actually happening this evening from 7:30 to 8:30, where you can return to a state of balance and well-being and identify the how and why we react, identify strengths and abilities, and move from fearing change to embracing it. And for the Zoom details and to register to attend this stress management through meditation program, you can go to their website, which is bkrymeditation.us. And these events by the Brahma Kumaris offered free of charge as a community service. Call Andy Lalani if you would like to attend Jeet Ka Safar with Amax this Friday, and his number is 817-883-3333. The 2009 T20 World Cup cricket team will be there. And then Neetu Chandra as Umrao Jan Ada on the stage of the Dallas Music Hall Friday and Saturday. There are 3 shows, 1 on Friday and then 2 on Saturday, and tickets are available at Ticketmaster.com. The Festival of Joy, where you can experience the bhakti traditions of ancient India, is happening on Saturday from 11 to 9 at the Clyde Warren Park. Festivalofjoydallas.com for more information on the Rath Yatra parade, the evening concert, vegetarian street food, kirtan, yoga and meditation. There's also a free vegan feast and children's activities, henna and face painting, and plenty more. The Radhakrishna Temple of Dallas is the venue for the Yoga for Unity event launch in Texas. And thrilled to invite you to this launch of Yoga for Unity. It's happening on the 27th at 4 o'clock at the Radhakrishna Temple in Allen on the 2nd floor hall. Yoga for Unity fosters collaboration among authentic yoga institutions to raise awareness of yoga resources and teachers. The launch event is on the 27th, that is this Saturday at 4 o'clock, recognizing collaborating organizations and leaders, followed by a 20 to 30-minute demonstration session of asana, pranayam, and dhyan. The Festival of India by the Dallas Indian Lions Club will be held this Sunday, the 28th, in Plano. This is the 39th annual celebration this Sunday. And for the first time in American television history, PBS stations across the U.S. will show a new documentary film on Swami Vivekananda called America's First Guru. We have the DFW Gujarati Samaj presenting a non-stop comedy drama with renowned artist Sri Sanjay Goradia on the 5th of May at 5 o'clock at the McKinney North High School. Light refreshments will be available for purchase. You need to get your tickets right now. You can go to DFW Gujarati Samaj's website and get more information of this comedy drama with Sri Sanjay Goradia on the 5th of May at 5 o'clock at the McKinney North High School. Hassan Sumro, in association with the Sheesh Eatery and Lounge, is presenting Moms and Momos, celebrating moms in a fun-filled contest, and that will be hosted by the one and only Hina Dilpazir Khan. That is happening on the 9th of May at 7:30 at the Sheesh Eatery and a Lounge. And the Intense Tour with the Indian Idol participants is happening on the 10th of May at the Grand Center in Plano. And on the 11th of May, an evening of ghazals and geets by Radhika Chopra at the Plaza Theatre in Garland. Let me give you a number to call if you need more information or for bookings. It's 404-718-0009. Unforgettable 90s by Kumar Shanu and Sadhana Sargam on Sunday, the 12th of May also. And we do have Junoon performing on the 19th of May. And the annual technology conference that is brought to you every year by the U.S. India Chamber of Commerce is on the 23rd of May, featuring keynote speaker Chakri Gotabakulla, the CEO and co-founder of O9 Solutions. We have the North Texas Food Bank presenting Taste of the Cowboys, and that is the 20th anniversary of the Taste of the Cowboys, presented by Ashley and hosted by the Dallas Cowboys, featuring headliner John Michael Montgomery. It is on the 7th of June at the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. And then a 2-day festival on the 8th and 9th of June. It's a holistic festival of life and wellness brought to you by Mystic Mandala. And it is over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 8th and 9th of June at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center. And for more information, you can call Vijay at 972-750-14 19. The Badshah's Pagal tour is happening at the Curtis Culwell Center on the 14th of June, and at the Curtis Culwell Center, Shreya Ghoshal will be live on the 16th of June. Nan's Visions presenting Dallas's Glamorous Night with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June. And as we get information about more events, we'll get them to you right here on Community Radio Networks. If you would like to reach me directly for any questions about Community Radio Networks, let me give you my direct number. It is 214-675-1754. And do give me permission now to end my show for this morning. You have all the information to go take on the day. And the date today is 4/24/24. Wishing you all a lovely Wednesday morning.